was established in 1998 in Novi Sad, Serbia. We have been engaged in organizing exhibitions, presenting and marketing artworks, offering a wide range of professional services, art consultancy and publishing. We exhibit selected modern and contemporary artists together with emerging ones. Special attention has been paid to the international cooperation and presentation of Serbian artists abroad. Therefore, we cooperate with a number of galleries internationally. In 2013, we established Danube Dialogues Contemporary Festival, which has become our major regional developing project.
Good afternoon to all our viewers and all the audiences that are tuning in for our Arts Alive webinar series. As you know, that the city of Johannesburg is presenting the 28th edition of the Arts Alive International Arts Festival. And as part of, Arts Alive Festival going digital this year, we have prepared a webinar series that kicks off today with an international webinar that is going to focus on the impact and the evolution of visual arts market platforms. So we have prepared a host of speakers that are going to take us through the Arts Alive, the webinar today, and we are going to dissect the visual arts sector as an economic sector, but also looking at the socio-political impact that it has in societies. And we will also look at how COVID-19 has impacted the business models for our respective business, for our respective market platforms, both in South Africa, but we're also connecting with Central Europe and also Eastern Europe, which is Hungary and Serbia. So we welcome all of you. And just as an introduction, and also reflecting for those who may not be familiar with the visual arts sector, the visual arts sector, it's really a globalized market, and it is a component of the creative industries and one of the fastest and most consistently growing economic sectors. If you have been following trends in the visual arts sector, you will see that it is a sector that is fairly resilient to economic and even political changes in different countries, but also at a global level. And as South Africa, our biggest objective is really to see how it is that we can increase our market share of the visual arts sector by positioning, our creatives at various stages of the value chain for the visual arts market and the changing dynamics. And as a way of responding to that, we are going to host this seminar and reflecting on how is it that we can keep a tab on the changing dynamics and even on the trends in the sector, and looking at the evolution post the COVID-19 and seeing how is it that our artists, our art traders can position themselves in that market. The creative industries is one of the greatest contributors to many successful economies in the world, but also equally in South Africa, it's one of the important and ever-growing economic sectors. It is prioritized as one of the key economic drivers that are able to facilitate job creation, to create support for wealth creation opportunities for SMMEs and established businesses. But if you look at the visual arts sector and looking at the statistics from Statistica, which is a global market research company that looks at economic contributions of various creative industries, they indicate that the global art market, which is just the visual arts market, was valued at $67 billion in 2018. And this was up from $64 billion in the previous year, which was 2017. And this increase also shows in the volume of trade sales. If you look at individual transactions in the visual arts sector, there were 40 million transactions in 2018, which have increased, from 39 million transactions the previous year. This picture tells us that there is great economic potential in the sector. There is a way in which we can extract a lot of economic value for local artists. But furthermore, Statistica also indicates that in 2018, 10% of the $67 billion that were traded, 10% of that was for online sales, and looking up as to how the world is being pushed into, adopting a more rigorous approach in terms of online sales, and how many market platforms have also modified themselves to look at how they can position themselves better in facilitating online sales. We are set to see an increase in this figure of 10%. And they also indicate that for 46% of the total market trade in the visual art sector comes from market platforms such as Art Market Budapest, the FNB Art Joburg, the Danube Contemporary Art Festival in Serbia, the representatives of whom we have present here. So all of those market platforms that they are running have contributed 46% to the total trade, according to Statistica. And given the COVID-19 impact, in the first 6 months of 2020, this number has dropped to 16%. This is, I'm sure, the impact that can be felt across the visual art sector, and I'm sure a lot of individual artists can bear testimony to how severe the impact of COVID has been, both in terms of their ability to generate an income, to conduct economic activity, and also to facilitate the selling of their work. To unpack these subjects and more, we have Bramandla Sibeko, one of our panelists. He is the founder and director of FNB Art Joburg, and we must congratulate you, Bramandla, for acquiring and being the sole owner of the FNB Art Joburg, one of the really shining stars. And when we talk about Black excellence, this is the kind of examples that we would like to see, where there is meaningful economic change and the changing of power dynamics in terms of the economic sector in South Africa. And the FNB Joburg Art Fair is one of the largest, in fact, it is the largest in the continent of Africa. And by virtue of being the largest in Africa, it's one of the largest in the world, and attracting a number of exhibitors across the continent, very refreshing artworks. A pity that we couldn't have it this year in September, because it's traditionally held in September. They are a key partner to Arts Alive and to the city of Johannesburg. And Bramandla is going to talk later to us about how they have modified their business model and how they will be offering this in November of this year. So we welcome you, Bramandla. And we also...
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bramandla. We also have, a leading thought leader, and a gallerist, a curator in her own right. So and the director of the Danube Festival of Contemporary Art in Serbia, Ms. Vesna Latinovic, and Danube is a river in Serbia, one of the most important rivers. And as you know, a river is a source of life. And to name, a contemporary festival of art after a river is indicative also of the impact of art in the lives of the people and also in the society as a whole. The festival explores, the interdisciplinary nature of art and its importance in profiling artists from Serbia, but also looking, at the Eastern European region as a whole. I know, over the past few years, you've been getting a lot of interest from other platforms, from other markets within Western Europe and even beyond, people participating and adding value to your festival. Vesna, we are really delighted to have you. I know you probably are tired because the festival only ended yesterday, I think, after a 10-day exercise of you really trying to move about and promoting artists and really engaging in critical thought and conversation around the art sector in Serbia. So we welcome you, Vesna Latinovic from Serbia.
Thank you so much. It is my great pleasure to take part in this webinar. And to be more precise, my festival is still going on. It is going
Oh,
on
it's still
until
going.
the 28th of September. So, but the main activity is the opening, and all the guests that succeeded to manage to come in spite of the restrictions in cross-border mobility. So that's it. We have just started, but the main part is behind us.
Wow, that's exciting. That's exciting. I'm happy that we are in the middle of that festival. So thank you and welcome. I'm sure you will share more insights about the festival and how it's unfolding with us later on. We also have our third and final speaker to be introduced today, who is really an internationally recognized figure. It's a name that is known, a household name, not only in Hungary, but also across the world. You know, when you speak to people in Miami, you know, in the USA, they mentioned the name Attila Ledenyi. He is the director and founder of the Art Market Budapest, one of the leading art fairs in Eastern Europe that has also given rise, you know, and inspired many other similar art movements in that region. But also one that we as the city of Johannesburg have actively been looking at and promoting our local artists in, at least in the past 2 years we've been there. This was going to be our third year. And because of the COVID-19 situation, we were unable to really have a meaningful participation. But Attila was just saying, you know, we must not throw in the towel. Perhaps there's something we can salvage and see how we can still create some meaningful participation for local artists, because the European market as a whole is open. Art fairs have been taking place. We have seen in Paris, we have seen in Cosmo, in Moscow, the Cosmoco art fair in Moscow have been taking place, and even in Berlin, you know. So, and taking cue from those art fairs that have been successful with live audiences and not just virtually. I think Art Market Budapest is really one to look out for. And it is really a strong exhibition space, particularly for photography. So if you have an interest in promoting, you know, photography as a visual artist, this is the art fair to look out for. Attila is really is an entrepreneur, very passionate about his work, a skilled communication specialist in his own right, and an art lover. I consider him to be a high net worth collector, but I'm sure he will confirm or dispute that fact because of his wide collection of art, you know, and particularly African art, because he has a passion for African art. So we really welcome you, Mr. Attila Ledenyi.
Thank you, Vuyisile. Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody.
Okay, and to kick off our webinar, we are going to give each of our speakers a platform to speak to us about their respective platforms, so that all of us can build a common understanding of what is it that they offer. And then we will then ask them a few questions. After we've asked a few questions, we'll open up for audiences to also send through their questions. And we will just indicate if you're sending a question, who you're asking the question to, so that we can assign them to our respective speakers. And to kick off for us, we are going to request you, Bramandla, you know, having run several platforms, not just the FNB, you know, art market. I know you were also the brains behind the design fair, you know, that was held in Hyde Park. You have really a wide experience in various market platforms. How is it that COVID-19 has impacted these business models? Can you please take us through the FNB Art Fair, the FNB Art Joburg Fair? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vuyisile, for the opportunity to engage, and to all the colleagues who've joined from around the world. it's quite exciting to have a conversation in Johannesburg. I think our city is underrated. We get the worst public relations in the world. So when people hear Johannesburg, they hear crime. Whereas we have so much creativity that is happening in the city, and we're pioneering in many ways when it comes to just the cultural side of Johannesburg as a whole. And I think the world misses out to see us through the lens of culture. So our efforts have really been always orientated around how to position and contribute towards building an awareness in terms of really getting people together from different communities and different stakeholders who would come together at a specific time in the year to view art, learn, collect, and exchange. So at this time of the year, it's obviously quite sad that round about this time, I would be very, very, very tired, having produced an art fair, and we don't have one this year. And we knew this was coming. And I mean, COVID, we didn't know it was coming, but in terms of planning, we didn't know what would happen. So we kept on postponing our planning, and then we got to a point where we realized that it was not viable to have a physical fair in South Africa this year. We have had to adapt. I think the whole world has had to adapt, and we've had to adapt, and we going online. We have put together exhibitors, over 30 exhibitors that will be coming. These are the exhibitors that would be coming to Johannesburg in any case. So what's beautiful about it is that it's reflective of the diaspora, it's reflective of the continent. So where we are positioned is that we represent, I guess, the best of the best. When you're looking at African art, you are going to get the best of the best from our platform. So we have established galleries. Some of our established galleries have been really pioneering in the world, flying the flag solo actually for a long time, such as Goodman Gallery, Stevenson, and a few others. Really playing in this global market to position Johannesburg in the city. So we're quite lucky to have those kind of players who are respected and who do go to international fairs and who have made entry to the very big fairs around the world. We've looked at different models around how to do this online platform. So we're quite excited that we'll be launching our online, celebrating the content that is coming from the continent, the best of the best. But at the same time, we've had to take a long-term view around, once you have this platform, what do you do with it? So we're looking at it long-term, that this will be a platform that is available so that those that are looking to Johannesburg or looking to South Africa to understand more of our artists can really engage on our platform beyond the art fair. So we'll be having the art fair in November now. There's been some challenges, obviously, because art for me it's really a physical thing. I think it's so important that people get to see the art, but I do think that online and physicality can exist together. They can coexist. But nothing can replace physicality. So we're missing the energy, we're missing the vibrancy. As you know, when the art fair opens, the opening night in Johannesburg, it's always the calendar date when people really step out, they come out. It's been a few months of winter in South Africa, and there people come to celebrate culture. It's been quite inspiring to see the journey in terms of from the time when I started getting involved in the contemporary art market, that we have seen the market diversify. In the past, when I attended the old FNB Joburg Art Fair in the early days, there were very few Black people who actually attended the fair, very few. And over the years, we've seen it becoming more and more reflective of the city, its vibrancy, and just the diversity of the artists that are living in Johannesburg is amazing and inspiring. And the kind of work that they are doing, the studios that are set up across the different parts of Johannesburg. One of the artists is based in Bedfram in the CBD, and he's represented by one of the top 5 galleries in the world. I think South Africans don't even know yet. Not enough South Africans know about the kind of artists that who are living here, who've really have led the way globally. So it's very exciting when we can actually put out an online platform versus not having a fair at all completely, that we'll be able to do that and celebrate and find opportunities for people to exchange with us. We have an extended VIP program onto it. We have a talks program that we'll be launching. We also are bringing in a section that we launched last year, which looks at really exciting younger voices of artists from the continent, called Gallery Lab. So that will be coming. That will be a section that will be there. We're also trying out new things like having AR into our platform so that people can really play with their phones and place the work in their homes. We'll be running for 2 weeks and looking very much forward to people coming through. And we're always very excited to be at this time of the year because we're part of the Joburg Arts Alive program, which is a flagship program for Johannesburg that celebrates different genres and culture. And we're very happy to be flying this flag. But what the COVID situation has presented for us is it's really that we have to look deeper to greater collaborations. We need to find different ways of working together. So we've been very much engaged with the gallery system in South Africa just to find new ways in which we could elevate the platform. Some of the ideas that came out today is that maybe we should do some elements of physicality during this fair, with the changes with the president announcing yesterday that maybe despite being online, you can still do a few things, pop-ups around the city so that, you know, fewer people can be able to access art in different ways. But we're very excited to collaborate with all the different stakeholders in Johannesburg. Thank you.
Thank you, Bramanza. That's quite a exciting lineup you have planned, you know, and I love the fact that you've reflected on some of the great artists that we have, and I'm sure Attila and Vesna are listening, you know, attentively, because I know that they are constantly on the lookout, you know, for new and exciting artists that they can present in their own respective platforms. So we will now give an opportunity to Vesna to just take us through her presentation, and then we will take questions for all of you at the end. Thank you. Over to you, Vesna.
Thank you, Vesile. So it was such a pleasure to find out about interesting, vibrant scene of Johannesburg that you have just presented, Mr. Mandla, and I can't wait a moment that I will be able to visit it physically and to find out about such a nice community, culture, and artists. So regarding Bellart Gallery presence in art business, it dates more than 20 years ago, and we are engaged in a variety of professional services, and we are oriented towards artists, art connoisseurs, and collectors. And our special attention from the very beginning has been paid to international exchange and presentation of Serbian artists abroad. Our selection of artists actually includes both modern, I mean, not on both modern, contemporary, and emerging artists. And in our activities, we collaborate with a large number of local and international institutions. And as a result of this international cooperation, in 2013, we launched Danube Contemporary Art Festival, which this year is facing its 8th live edition. So by introducing Danube Dialogues Festival as our main regional project, we are now covering both profit and non-profit sector. And this makes a distinctive feature of Bellart Gallery. And this Danube Dialogues, as you mentioned, Danube, it is a denominator of 10 countries lying on the Danube, which are very versatile in many senses. So we have countries like Germany and Austria, the most developed countries, the most developed ones. Then a couple of countries that ex-communist or ex-socialist countries that have become a part of European Union. Some of them, like Serbia, are still waiting to be part of that family, and coming even to the Moldova or Ukraine, which have faced still serious problems. So such a variety and diversity can really give an interesting insight into the contemporary art trends in the region. And speaking about this ongoing edition of the ongoing 8th edition of the Contemporary Art Festival, it actually, the preparations took part in the midst of global uncertainty caused by the corona pandemic, and confronting us with unexpected challenges. And soon after the crisis broke out, the festival team, together with curators, and these were international curators, Mr. Ami Barak from Paris, Ms. Sorina Jetsa from Timisoara, and Sava Stepanov from Novi Sad, decided to continue, we all together decided to continue preparations to the festival, convinced that one must act regardless of life circumstances. And this decision encouraged artists and brought about new optimism and hope, offering new creative impetus at a time when museums and galleries around the world were closing and exhibitions and art fairs were being cancelled one after another. So we have endeavored to adjust to the festival program to these new conditions. We have prepared alternative options and developed an online platform for presenting artist content to the public. The theme of this year festival, because each edition has its special topic, this time it was Quo Vadis Homo, which was of course suggested last year by the artistic director, and it actually proved to fully reflect the present moment of great concern for the human destiny. So we decided that art, just as life, has no alternative and adapted to the circumstances. And I'm really very proud that we succeeded not only to have the festival in this hybrid form, but we had a physical presence of artists from abroad. We did not have the large public opening as we usually did, but we had special openings for media and for VIPs, up to 30 persons, which is the recommendation and the rule for the institutions, for the closed institutions. So and it really went very well. It was very successful, and the media response to the event was extraordinary. When this coronavirus pandemic turned our reality into virtuality, people were focused, and art collectors and art connoisseurs were focused on online and presentations. But at one point, it became too much, and they actually desired to have that direct, immediate contact with the artwork, which is of course normal. So that is basically our experience. We can talk about some more details later, but when speaking about the possibilities of exchanging and collaborating with South African artists, I see that possibility within the festival, because last year we introduced a segment, guest of honor or guest country, which was China. and we actually presented an exhibition, Chinese contemporary art on the Silk Road. And so we gave them the opportunity to showcase art scenes that are less known to our audience. And the next year we shall have the Japanese contemporary art scene presented within the festival. So I see the opportunity that we can cooperate in this respect with South Africa in some of the future editions.
Okay, that's now. I mean, whilst you are looking for that.
Sorry, I have a trouble. I'm trying to get back to you.
Okay. But you are still on.
Yes, I do. I do hear you.
Yes. Can we then take Attila, and then we'll give you another bite just soon after Attila, just for you to wrap up that last thought, you know, whilst you're trying to reconnect.
Okay.
Okay. Attila, we give over to you now to take us through your platform, and then we will then take Vesna just for her to wrap up the last bite of her presentation.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Let me give you just a general introduction of Art Market Budapest first, and then give you a specific introduction of what is happening currently in this year. Maybe just very briefly, I will add some of our conclusions and some of the lessons that we have learned over the past couple of months. Art Market Budapest is the leading international art fair in Central and Eastern Europe, and one of the prominent components of the European art market. This is going to be our 10th edition this year, so we've been around for nearly a decade. Art Market Budapest is often referred to as a flagship event of the regional art market and the regional creative industry. Usually annually, I'm saying usually because this is a very special year, so some of the numbers might look different this year than they usually do. But usually annually, we have over 100 exhibitors arriving from around 30 countries. Over the past years, we have had 50 countries represented, and we usually have exhibitors arriving from each of the 5 continents of the world. We have thousands of artworks by usually over 500, 600 artists represented every year. And in the 4+1 VIP days, so in the 5 days, we usually attract an audience of about 30,000 people. While our overall communications activities, they reach an audience of millions of people. Now that, you know, with the 10th editions approaching this October, obviously we're facing very special and unusual challenges. But for the format, we follow a regular art fair format. Just for those who are not aware of what it is, artists at Art Market Budapest are represented by their galleries. So there are no artist applications directly. We created and maintained a special section, what we call art project section, which is saved specifically for art education and not-for-profit organizations. But also there, artists come not individually, but being represented by either a university or a foundation or a collection. There is an application process. We have a professional board, and the board decides on the selection in cooperation with the fair management. The good thing about the format is that it traditionally, globally mobilizes the top 40 fairs in the world, mobilizes over 2 million people. The reason why we wanted to create an art fair is exactly this, because this is the most open form, the most communicative form of presenting contemporary art to the public. And the significance of art fairs as a format comes out of a recent survey that I just read a little while ago. There was a survey among galleries in the world. And galleries say that one of the most important tasks of an art gallery is to look for new audiences, new buyers, new art lovers. And when they were asked what's the primary tool for them to reach out to these new audiences, they said it's the art fairs. So that's that is what gives an importance to the kind of work Mandla and ourselves do in the world. Obviously, this year came with challenges that we have to meet and circumstances that we have to adapt to. So what we decided to do is to introduce a hybrid solution. We definitely wanted to keep the physical format. Reasons have already been listed. Keep the physical format. We have to narrow it down a bit because of the various anti-COVID regulations. But since we wanted to make sure that we keep our whole community together, we're also establishing an online art fair. So those who cannot be with us physically, we wanted to make sure that they can stay with us, at least in the in virtuality. What we also decided to do is that, as you already mentioned, photography is an important element of what we do. Hungary has a long tradition in photography, and on this basis, we launched the photography section years ago. What we're doing this year is that we're taking parts of the photography section and we built it into our gallery section, while Art Photo Budapest, which is our photography section, is going to come in its full blossom in its own online version only. Due to travel restrictions, it currently seems, touch wood, it currently seems that we still have probably over 20 countries coming to be represented this year. But due to travel restrictions, we decided that the thematic focus of the fair is going to be on our region, on Central and Eastern Europe. While we usually have, last year we had Russia, previous years we had Israel and various other countries. What we're saying this year is that art in Eastern Europe is strong and attractive enough for us to be able to put this one into a focus. Vesna is going to be among our exhibitors, making sure that Serbia is also represented in this composition. What we also do with our galleries is that we are encouraging them to ship the artworks early. And we provide a museum quality storage facilities for those who can ship early. We need to be prepared for whatever happens in late October. If the gallery representatives cannot be with us physically, we provide staff, because we want to make sure that the artworks are there and the audience gets what the audience is looking for. To those who cannot travel, we offer not only installation services, but also services and logistics with regard to traveling, shipping, even border crossing. So it's quite a complex job to maintain a physical fair this year. However, whoever can travel and want to come, we're going to be open October 22 to 25. So we're looking forward to your company on or offline if worse come to worse next year. There are a couple of lessons we learned. Obviously, there was some reluctance from our exhibitors to only want to appear online, but we see this as an opportunity rather than a curse, because the online presence is going to be an excellent tool for us to be able to reach out to new exhibitors and new audiences. So we're not only focusing on making our already existing community happy, but we use the online presence to further expand and to further grow our community, both on the audience side and the exhibitor side. However, even if online, an art fair remains an art fair, since we believe that nothing can beat this format. So what we do, even in our online version, is that we as an art fair present a large number of artists under the same roof. This makes us different from a museum or a gallery. We make buying easier by providing a very wide variety and a very wide selection of artworks, which is also an opportunity for a collector or buyer to compare. And obviously our galleries are going to benefit from this extended new audience. However, no matter how useful the online presence is, we believe in physicality. We believe that the in-person experience in visual arts is simply irreplaceable. Although we know that that online sales are going better this year, obviously, than in previous years. However, what we're also experiencing is that a lot of it is usually there's lower trust in online shopping than actual physical buying of art. It usually goes to the blue chip artists or the well-recognized artists. It's usually the younger generation or the lesser represented artists who suffer if the presence is limited to an online solution. So our belief is that COVID-19 just sets new circumstances which we have to adapt to, and we have to build the structure within which we do the most we can. And this is no criticism for those who finally have to decide to stay entirely online, because I know Mandla has been making all the efforts to do whatever is possible to make it a physical show. But what we all believe that we should go as far as we can to give the in-person experience back to our audiences. One last comment, which is very, which I think is also very relevant for Joburg and the Joburg Art Fair, is that usually we all want to go global when building an art fair. We want to talk to global audiences who want to be able to present art globally. This is a year when regionalism and locality becomes a very, very important factor. And what we have to learn and experience and take advantage of is that this year gives us the opportunity to be able to focus more on where we are, whether it's a country or a region. Reach out to our local audiences, reach out to our regional buyers and artists, and help grow the market locally. So regionalism, I think, is one of the key words for this year. Just a recent example, and I'm going to finish it because I'm going too long. Sorry. Just a recent example. Yeah, Paris, as Wisela, you mentioned, Paris just had a very successfully organized art fair, Art Paris, which usually is a local fair in the sense that it only has about 10 countries or a little more, but it strongly builds on its local region. And they had a successful show with 60,000 visitors just in these days. Another fair, FIAC, in the same country, in the same city, actually at the same location, they announced that they're not going to have a fair this year because they heavily rely on overseas audiences and overseas exhibitors. And this is a very good example of how we can take advantage of doing more regionally and doing a little less globally, or maybe doing things globally on our online services. I can carry on, but then thank you, Wisela.
Okay.
Some of the conclusions we have come to, but I'm happy to share more.
Okay. No, I'm sure you will have another chance, to expand on some of those ideas. Interestingly, I have prepared a question around the question of, globalism, regionalism, because it's something that we touched on in the Inside Art conference last year in Budapest. So we will expand a little bit more on that idea. Vesna, I would like to give you an opportunity now just to cover the outstanding part of your presentation.
Excuse me for this technical moment, but actually I suppose that I only have to conclude with my satisfaction that my team has managed to make this hybrid physical and online edition of the festival. And also there was a final remark that since we introduced last year this segment, guest countries or country of honor, for presenting less known art scenes in this region. So that is the thing that I would like to discuss and to offer as opportunity in future to have South Africa as one of the guests in one of the future editions.
Great stuff. No, thank you very much, Vesna, for that presentation. And I think it also then gives me an opportunity to thank all of you for your really well-prepared and quite incisive presentations into your respective market platforms. And these are arguably some of the largest platforms in the world, that stand shoulder to shoulder with many other recognized art fairs around the world. The numbers that you have generated, Attila went into great detail around the numbers. They speak for themselves in terms of what the impact of your respective platforms are. Bramandla, I want us to zoom a little bit into the South African platforms, and it seems like the South African market platforms is a tight network, when it comes to at least facilitating the entry of artists into the mainstream. Is African art, in your view, evaluated through a Western European lens? And if so, how do we ensure that African art can be assessed in its own standards, according to its own aesthetic merits, and also in its own, according to the nuances that it presents, because it would appear that for African artists to make it into the mainstream, the standard by which their work is evaluated is often a European one, and that creates a barrier for them to enter the market more meaningfully. Is that still the case? And if so, how can we navigate out of that? Bramandla.
Sure. I think you've raised such an important point. Part of the mission, or I guess part of my work, has been to make sure that we build a very strong local collector base, or an ecosystem that can support the art industry in South Africa. So part of the challenges is exactly that there is this, there's this movement in the world. I mean, you remember the Economist had this article about Africa being the next future, and now art from South Africa, from Africa, is now the buzzword around the world. So what then happens is that for many years, African artists or artists from South Africa, they've been receiving more recognition abroad than they actually are at home. Less celebrated on African soil, unfortunately, but that has started to change so much in the last couple of years. However, we need to keep encouraging this. And I think the sustainability of African art is not so much that Europeans, Americans, or people around the world are able to buy the work. It's really dependent on Africans acquiring the work. It's very much dependent on South Africans supporting the system. So I've been encouraging that we have to build a strong local collector base. We have to make sure that the ecosystem is strong enough to support artists here. Their success is so important in terms of their sustainability. So in the event that, Americans move on to Mexico, or they move on to India, or they move on to other markets, what happens? Then this African appeal will disappear. So it's really, really, really important. And yes, some of the artists have are priced in one system. So you'll find that an artist like Zanele Muholi is priced in US dollars, because she is represented by multiple galleries around the world. So the price point has changed to that, but that's just standard, what is happening in the world. You can't have a different price for Zanele in South Africa and a different price for Zanele when she's in New York or Berlin. So it's just one price. So what's exciting has been to seeing how the artists from the continent, or from Africa, that they've really led in many ways in very deep conversations. I mean, the work that Zanele Muholi does in the LGBT community, I don't know of any artists in the world that has a following across sort of 4 continents: Africa, Europe, the US, you name it all. And she's able to kind of get a movement going across there. And that's really significant and important. But what's really great is that South African artists or African artists are starting to be recognized and are fetching those prices that are equivalent to their peers in the world. But what needs to change is a system where there's this categorization that happens, that, oh, you belong to the African section and this section and this and that. That needs to change, because I believe that art is art. It doesn't matter where it comes from. Zanele is an international artist, just like Robin Road is an international artist. They just come from South Africa, or they come from anywhere else on the continent. So the work that we do here is very much orientated. I love what Attila said earlier. Because it's very much aligned to what we're doing, is that we celebrate the culture of the art community in our region, which is Johannesburg. So part of our focus last year, rebranding, renaming the fair, and changing the content structure, was really set around making sure that we really focus on the future. And the future is that we have to make sure that South Africans and local Johannesburg people are able to buy the work and continue to support the ecosystem, because that's when we know that we'll be quite successful. It doesn't matter how much success an artist can get anywhere else in the world. We feel that if they're not as successful in South Africa, then our work is still behind.
Great stuff. And Attila, I mean, coming strong on what Bramanda is saying, I remember in the conversation that you and I had, you also made mention about the global focus on African art and the growing demand for African art. How do you think that African artists, and in particular South African artists, are as responsive as they should be to this demand, and how is it that we can position ourselves better if our responsiveness is not really, commensurate with the growing demand for African art.
What Manla just said, it raised a lot of thoughts in me. A strong local market is always a big help. We've learned it, throughout the times that I remember when suddenly the Russian art appeared on the global market, which was prepared, the basis for which was prepared by the local market. Local collectors started to buy it, brought up the prices. So suddenly the world started to take it seriously. So as Mandla said, building a local community behind of art lovers, art buyers, that's always very important. The art market is constantly evolving. It's a very hungry market. What it does is that it keeps looking for new sources, emerging sources of art. And it used to be China. 30 years ago, it used to be Eastern Europe. And Africa is absolutely has come into the focus of attention. But it's always, when you suddenly get the market attention, it's an opportunity that you have to be able to grab. And if you have your structures built up cleverly to make sure that your art is properly represented, that you have local pillars to reach out to. Like, for example, for us at Art Market Budapest, to have a traditional, because this would have been the third year, a traditional exhibitor coming from Johannesburg, coming from South Africa, it's a very important element because we now have a direct source of information when it comes to looking for South African art. The fact that you have an art fair in your city, that's also a structural element, something what the market can relate to. So that's a very important thing. The third idea is that came to my mind is it's always important to find a good way to actually present yourself globally. But it's always a big question whether you want to do it as a component which is temporarily put into focus, or a component that is incorporated to a larger entity. And actually we tried both. We consider photography an important component of what we do. In the first 5 years, we said that photography should be a part of our overall selection. But then we realized that if we really want to put photography into focus, we should probably have a separately branded photography section. And honestly, I think it works both ways. Africa has an international representation through 154, which is an art fair. It's a larger art fair in London. It's a smaller art fair in New York. They also have an edition in Marrakesh. But the effort we're trying to make by incorporating South African art, I think what it does is that it makes it less of an unusual thing and more of a usual component. And this is why our cooperation with the Joburg Art Gallery as an organic element of our overall composition is actually very, I think it's very effective. I mean, this is how we could have, this is how we could present artists like the amazing Tracy Rose, or, you know, some of the guys from the younger generation, like Cromwell and Benny, you know, to a European public. So it's the, so I think it works both ways, you know, put it in the focus, but make sure it stays as part of the global community. I can carry on.
No, thanks a lot. You know, Vesna, I'm sure, you know, in positioning African art, the content and subjects that the art is dealing with are as important, you know, in the mind of the consumer. And I know that in the Danube dialogues that you've been dealing with, you have also been reflecting on, you know, the contradictions presented by neoliberal capitalism through topics such as art and crisis, art in the age of non-emotionality, art in the age of global insecurity, you know, and perceptions of contemporaneity and so on. Can you take us through how important it is for art to deal with, you know, topical issues, but also substantive issues in society as a way of artists really capturing the attention of collectors, you know, by dealing with strong subjects and subject matter?
Yes. So it is clear that then mankind is currently facing major crisis resulting from the culmination of liberal capitalism and domination of profit-making philosophy. And the pandemic is only a reflection of global society stemming from a systematic lack of care for human beings, even in the most powerful countries. And under such conditions, art has a new task. It must actually provide support and comfort to our souls, not only to the artists themselves, but to all of us, to our souls. And the function of art should be focused on man and his aesthetic and ethical, spiritual and existential need. And this, of course, does not mean that art should make reality look prettier than it is. These times that we live in call for a clear idea and open and functional relationship involving artists, involving his work, involving community, meaning large audience, and such work of art will offer an adequate ethical message, enriching our lives and affirming that something that we must preserve to survive, and that is actually emotion. So that is the thing that art should do and should reflect. If I've answered your question, so there are actually sorry, the art is being the most sensitive parts of our population. We must admit that they are. They can reflect, they can anticipate, and they can send us more powerful messages than through their artworks that can be explained narratively.
And Bramanda, do you think in terms of the South African art scene, there was a lost opportunity in really capturing, you know, the state of crisis as Vesna has outlined, you know, and not to reflect on society in a way that makes it pretty, but to reflect on the existential reality that we are faced with? Do you think that there was a critical mass of South African artists that captured the moment, that reflected more honestly on the state of crisis that we find ourselves in, as a way of really projecting their experience of the world and of society more honestly?
Sure, absolutely. I think if there was anything, these artists from South Africa have been doing exactly that even before COVID. They've been dealing with issues of migration. As you know, in Europe, even today, I saw somewhere that a boat, I don't know how many people are arriving from another country on the continent in Italy. There's still so much migration happening. So some of the artists have been dealing in that subject. William Kendridge, and a few other artists have been dealing in this matter. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, we've done a series of webinars with some of which have included some of the artists, and it's been quite inspiring to see them take us through to their studios and see the kind of work they're making. Especially William Kendridge and Robin Rode were some of the artists that we engaged with, who were able to take us through to their studios to show us that they are reacting to this moment, being in lockdown. In South Africa, we've just only moved to we are about to move to level 1 in a few days' time. Level 5, as you know, we could not get out of our homes for a long time, and level 4 and level 3. And so artists were also, some of them are isolated from going to their studios. And then finally, when we moved to the next level, they were able to go back and make work. So I do think they've been dealing with the subject matter. If you look at an artist again like Zanele Muholi, she has been dealing with the LGBT issues which exists in the world. How do Africans relate to these issues, and how does the world deal with it? And it just goes to show you that the artists are very much honest. I always, I think in one of my earlier interviews a couple of years ago, I said, I think the future leaders of this world will be artists, because they are really the truth tellers. And it's been just amazing to see them openly say what the issues are. They've spoken very openly around the issues of the government of today, the issues of colonialism and the issues of apartheid. And then some others have just decided that, you know what, why is it that some artists of color have to always be engaged in these issues? It almost feels like it's like a baggage on their shoulders to always be engaging in very tough subject matters. They also just want to paint like other artists in the world and just dream and do other things. But it's been quite, I must say that it's been inspiring to see the kind of work that's been coming from this part of the world.
And are the South African mainstream galleries receptive of, that kind of work? And is it finding expression in the mainstream as much as it is, being generated at emerging levels of art production?
Absolutely. There's been such an evolution in the gallery system in South Africa. As you know, South Africa was kind of isolated from the rest of the continent for a long time. We take that for granted, actually, that South Africans were socialized in such a way that they thought that South Africa is not really part of Africa. So post 1994, it's been quite a journey to see that it reflects across everything that is South African, including the kind of art that was being shown amongst South African galleries, that they were very South Africa focused and very quickly adapted very fast to making sure that the stable was now reflective of artists from the continent. So when you look at the galleries in South Africa, they basically represent quite a rich, I think most of them touch on the 54 nations across where there is really great artists, they will be holding them. But also some of the galleries in South Africa have taken a position. Goodman Gallery, as an example, has been involved in the anti-apartheid movement long before 1994 and continue to position themselves from a social justice initiative. And they primarily work with artists who work in social justice, as an example. And I think that's quite a statement, not only coming from South Africa, but globally, that there are not many galleries in the world that could say, oh, our position is that we just recruit and work with artists who deal in social justice matters. So we are a free country. We have an amazing constitution, and it's been really amazing to see how artists have really used the freedoms that were given to them after 1994. As you know, before that, we were in apartheid, that, you know, their voices have been very accepted across. It's been quite tough, as you know. There were times when artists engaged on material that looked at the former president, as an example, and that became quite a national discussion, something that moved from the gallery into newspapers, into news, into radio. And those are vital discussions that have helped South Africans to learn or to find tools in moving us forward as we build a new South Africa together.
Certainly. And, Attila, you touched on the issue of, globalism, regionalism, and I've recently also read how excellently Vesna has dealt with the issue, with the question of how, the internationalization of arts impacts on, local artists. Do you think that, you're a strong advocate for regionalism. How do you think that, South Africa can focus on projecting itself and protecting, the local market by not overly emphasizing the issues of globalism? Just unmute.
Yeah, one has to find a fine balance between not being too local, but being globally understandable and presentable. It was almost funny when a couple of years ago, three or 4 years ago, we invited Israel as one of as our guest country in the given year, and we were reaching out to artists in Israel and inviting them to present Israel in this in this guest program, and a vast majority of them said that, but I'm not an Israeli artist. I'm an artist. I'm an artist of the world. So they had difficulties understanding of how they can be presented as an Israeli artist when they, as an artist, think in global terms. There's got to be a balance between the two. Coming back to how South Africa can present itself. I think one of the key elements of success in that sense is that if you want to be, or if you have a good reason to want to be a center of a region or a continent, even, you have to be very open for impacts coming from the outside, if you know what I mean. You cannot overstress your locality in that sense. You have to be interested, and you have to be incorporating. You have to be welcoming to artistic components and content coming from other parts of your region. And once you create a broader circle, once you create a wider content within which you can show the quality of your own art, is exactly how you can achieve that your art or your local artistic content is appreciated. Art Market Budapest, although this is an international effort, the simple fact that it happens to be based in Budapest, it does a great job for the local scene. But for one to be able to get the attention and attraction, one has to be more international, more global, more complex, to be able to reach out to those audiences out there. Once you have that, once you once you are an incorporator, once you're a home of artists coming from other parts of the world or other parts of your continent or your region, is when you can actually put your own art into the focus of attention in a far easier way. This is what we've been experiencing. Ever since we launched Art Market Budapest 9 years ago, the number of Hungarian galleries invited and accepted to top international art fairs has skyrocketed. It is because the international audience comes here and they see Hungarian galleries and Hungarian artists in an international context, and they see how good they are. So that's it's obviously not an answer to your question, but it's a thought provoked by a question.
Yes. Well, Vesna, I mean, we reflected slightly on this, that although there is a greater appreciation of African art, there isn't an in-depth understanding, of what's available in Africa. Do you think in the Eastern European market there is an appetite for the consumption of African art, and how is it that what advice can you give to local artists here in Johannesburg, but also in South Africa, as to how they can take advantage of that appetite?
Yes, as Attila said previously, that appetite for art is general and regardless of the region where it actually we consider. So there is a space. Even so, this globalization, easy tools to communicate, made everything accessible and well known. So it is obvious that recently Africa is coming into focus as opening up to the world in this field. But in the past, African art has been recognized only for its tribal art. It has made, and the tribal art has made a major contribution to Africa receiving this artistic recognition worldwide. So I don't know that, I suppose that you don't know that in Belgrade, our capital, there is a very distinguished African art museum. And that was because ex-Yugoslavia and its president Tito, well known and was one of the leaders of the non-aligned countries, actually cherished friendly and close relations with a number of African countries. And as a result of this relation in the 60s and 70s of the century, the museum has been founded in Belgrade, and it is still a touristic landmark of the city. But this recent upcoming of the African contemporary art is here in the region known more from the internet side, because all big exhibitions, of course we know about the Fair 154 that was created in 2013 and attracted such a great attention of collectors and some big exhibitions. But these events were occurring in Paris, New York, London, Marrakesh. So I think that this southeastern part of the Europe is hungry to find out about this freshness, this new creativity of African artists.
And Bramanda, so perhaps if you can take us through how you have modified, your model and how is it now it's going to be presented, and what some of your patrons and the art lovers that follow the FNB Art Joburg can expect, in terms of how they can plug into the new model. If you can just maybe share that with us so that we can have an understanding as to how things have evolved for the FNB Art Joburg?
Sure. Just to give context, I think both the colleagues touch on very important points about the importance of the international market. If at all, if there's anything that South Africans have done very well at, has been to position the art scene very internationally, I must say. The amount of effort that goes into positioning of artists across the globe is phenomenal, given the kind of resources that we have in South Africa, that they're not like the resources you have in Europe, that a lot of work has gone into it. We've always recognized the importance of working in an international scene. In fact, one of the world's top collector has, I think 19% of her collection happens to be South African artists or African artists, as an example. So it just goes to show you, and she's not even South African, she's American. But, she collects globally, work, she's and has come down to South Africa as a guest twice, actually. And so the importance of our fair, why we resized, was so that you could manage the clutter. It's very easy in the world to punt this word African art, and you have to ask yourselves, is it really African art? Is it quality African art? Is it stuff that's sustainable, or is it very craft, or is it flea market looking like? So it's very, very important that in the world, especially where people don't know about our region or don't know our cultures, that they begin to understand what is actually contemporary African art. And because we do have some really excellent artists, the stable is quite big now, actually, of African artists who are phenomenal. Just a couple of weeks, the #1 gallery in the world has signed up an African artist from Zimbabwe who's actually represented, she's been represented by a South African gallery for many years, who has shown in major cities, in Paris, in New York, and around the world. So it's like a big deal that David Zwena has now has signed up an African artist. But what I'm trying to say is that we have to be very careful around what are we showing the world, because it can be quite misleading in terms of quality. So where we're strong is that when you come to our platform, is that you'll be able to see the best of the best. And that's our positioning, is that we don't look down to our market. We don't talk down to our market. We speak, we basically present what our presentations are at the same level as any other fair in the world. So if any people had to walk in, they would feel that this is an international fair. So we also have taken a position to collaborate with different countries each year. This year, we were actually going to do a Brazil focus, because when I visited Brazil, I was quite surprised at how strong the local market was, that the buyers in Brazil were mostly local, versus international buyers. And then that international galleries were now going to Brazil to sell to local buyers, which was quite interesting. So it was, and then there were some few collectors who collected work from across the globe, but it's an international art scene, very much attracting people from around the world. So the international part is just as important as the local part. So some of the things that we're doing now is that we are allowing that when we have the FNB Art Joburg, when we move finally to physicality next year, is that we engaging with them with, creating a series of activations across the city of Joburg through Gallery Weekend, allowing us to go beyond the convention center model to engage, but also it has allowed us to present very large scale works. We don't have many institutions in South Africa, unlike in many European American cities. So like in Johannesburg, we only have the Joburg Art Gallery as the only institution. So an art fair in South Africa plays quite an important role in education too. So it's not only just for people to buy, but it's for people to learn. And we've always known that's exactly what happens. In fact, for many people who ultimately become buyers in the gallery system in South Africa, get a soft landing at the art fair, and then ultimately get to know who the players are, and then and then start to buy the work. So our positioning has been that we need to make sure that we reorientate ourselves to really resize ourselves to this market. So we're much smaller than we were, and we've seen in the world that that being more focused is the best way to go, and we've decided to go more focused. We have a model that's cross-subsidized, so the bigger players are paying more, which allows us to be able to subsidize for the other players who cannot afford to pay the premium prices. We've introduced a very large section called Gallery Lab, which you would never find in an art fair, that allows sort of younger voices to actually be at the center of the art fair, so people can walk in and not feel like they've been put in a specific corner for young people. So it's a very much more sharing space. And obviously the programming, which looks at talks that will run during that weekend when we have the art fair. So the repositioning was really important because it really was making sure that we resize to the market and that we then start to attract the right kind of players. So if you look at our what we're presenting this year, it's really exciting that there's quite a lot of the voices are coming from the continent that are coming through to the platform again, and we hope to sustain it and grow from here.
Okay. No, thanks a lot. We have a comment from Karabo Semenya saying it's a very interesting model for an art fair. We also have, the manager for digitization in the Johannesburg City Museums, Vanya Vucinic, saying that she's excited that we, going digital because she's very passionate about digitization, and also excited for the collaboration with Serbia because she's originally from that region. So, and then Attila, we have many collectors. There was also a survey done, particularly with the high net worth collectors in the world, and asking them how are they adapting to the digitization and how is it informing their buying patterns. And this is not just for collectors, but for traders and also art connoisseurs. Do you think that, you've expressly stated earlier on that the in-person experience can never be replaced. Do you think that, collectors would be adaptable, or they will continue to demand the in-person experience?
There's no question that they will want to maintain the in-person experience. This is my absolute belief and my direct experience. This is one of the reasons why now that the community knows that we're going physical, there's such a hunger and thirst for all these people to be able to get together again. Consuming art, even if you're on the most sophisticated digital surface, a lot of interaction is necessary for a sophisticated buyer to understand the piece, to understand the message behind the artist's personality, the beauty of collecting contemporary is that the artist is still alive. Where does this lead us if the artist who is still alive and we appreciate that element of collecting contemporary art, so the artist is still alive, but she or he is nowhere in the online space. So in that sense, the online presence cannot replace the in-person experience. And this is why, and also what happened in the past 6 months is that the volume and the amount of art available online has grown so much. It has become such an overwhelming experience that it's actually too much. We've been talking for about an hour. I'm sure that pretty much all of us have received at least 10, if not 50, invitations to yet another viewing room or a virtual tour of. It's you know, it really is way too much to you know, to consume. However, and this is what I referred to at the beginning of our conversation, if we can judge where online presence has its strength and where it creates possibilities, it obviously is a very supportive element of how we talk to our audiences, how we develop new audiences. So we need to know where the strengths and possibilities are for us to be able to use it properly for our own purposes. So it's an important component, but let me give you an example. A wonderful piece, and this goes back to what Vesna referring to tribal art and contemporary art. A piece by the great Esther Malangu is one of my daughter's favorite in our collection. And it's a beauty. But we always wanted to meet with Esther. You know, and if the possibility of that is taken away, then you know, it's so part of the experience. So we have to use you know, these techniques cleverly. But ultimately, what we're going to use it for is to make sure that people can connect, and connecting has a very strong in-person or physical aspect to it. Also, you know, with art fairs or art in general, we play such an important role in cultural tourism or cultural diplomacy, and these things are not happening online.
Yes.
Tourism is happening physically. Diplomacy is happening physically. And this is what we're talking about here, really. What art can be a tool for, what our festivals and art fairs can be tools for. It's all, you know, ultimately, it's all physical.
Yes.
Some of the market moves to virtuality.
Yeah. And Vesna, I mean, we have now a lot of people expressing an interest in participating in the respective art fairs that we have presented here today. And one of the questions that comes from the viewers is how they can participate in your respective platforms. But also another question which I want to link to this question is on the use of the what people call the fourth industrial revolution. You know, I always have problems with that because it's a European periodization. But you know, how can people use technology as a means of participating? But also, if for physical participation, how can people participate in your platforms?
So just to explain how Danube Dialogue's contemporary art festival functions, we have partners in separate countries, meaning institution, gallery, with nominated curator who actually selects the artists for the next edition, which has its own topic. So that is the way we can be in communication with your gallery, or you can recommend any other gallery that would be interested to cooperate in this sense, and we can make a correspondence and find ways for some of one of the future editions to invite African or South African artists to be part of it, and that would be really our great honor to have such a good opportunity to present South African art in our region, which, as I mentioned, did not happen very often, just randomly. So one exhibition overviewing the art scene of in South Africa, with presenting more artists, several artists, would be real contribution to our festival, and also would provide a new experience for our collectors and art lovers. So when we are talking about the future, about this physical and online presence, we I think all should continue to implement this hybrid model of active online presence combined with physical presence, of course, always respecting the measures that will be in force at that time. But we do count on online buyers, collectors, artists, especially the galleries. And if we are talking about the art market, and we actually count on those that are collectors that have never been in personal contact to the galleries. So apart from the gallery space, of course, the online viewing rooms of art fairs and innovative auction platforms can compensate for this, of course. So what actually, as a conclusion, what should I say? That we are to be aware of the circumstances and accommodate to the situation, but hoping that future will soon that bring some new situations which will be more likely to the one that we are used to, but it will, at the same time, they will definitely be new creative solutions. And we are galleries, artists, museums, art critics, the whole system, the players in the art sectors are those that should contribute and should actually treat this situation as inspiring, because the art, of course, will go on as a life itself, and the history of art has shown that in many critical points, critical moments in wartime, for example, some extraordinary masterpieces have been made. So this vitality of the art has been proved so many times, and why not now at this present situation? And on the other hand, there is no doubt that the collectors will keep on with their interest in art, because this is a passion, this is emotion, and it actually makes important part of their lives, and it will go on. And this is the chance for all of us, and we are all together on the same side, and we should, all of us, each of us, try to contribute to this whole system to be functional and to make experience, and a good experience, to all players.
And as a gallerist as well, how has the COVID-19 situation really impacted you, and how you structure your business model and your relationship going forward with your artists?
Of course, we all had to modify our business models due to this corona or COVID-19 pandemic. So the first new experience was that gallery was closed for 10 weeks. It was shut down. So we used that time, myself and my team actually used this time to rethink and improve our digital strategy, being focused on this kind of communication I can report that we did have some results and managed to achieve raise of actually to achieve a sale above average in this online sense. So we are actually definitely count on new online buyers, and actually we should accommodate to this new situation. But it is important that this online strategy that was planned even before was just propelled by this pandemic situation. But what is really encouraging is that collectors remained active in the market despite of this destabilized situation, and that we did have a sale physically it was less than it was before, but it has been noted the rise in online sale.
Okay. Bramandla, there's a question also from Mandy Johnston. I'm sure you know her. She's asking, are there opportunities being considered for, artists who are not represented by galleries to present their work at the FNB Art Joburg?
Yes, there are. In fact, there has been a call, just not sure if it has closed already, for artists to be represented in a section called Gallery Lab. So definitely yes. The answer is yes. Okay. There is a section that does open up for that.
Okay, and I'm sure people can find more information on your website. Yes, that's it. Yes, yeah. But do you think there are enough spaces being created for artists that are not affiliated to galleries and artists who do not intend to be affiliated with galleries? Are there enough spaces being created for such artists to make it on their own into the mainstream market, Bramandla?
Sure. I think, if you look at the Joburg art ecosystem, there are various players, which we're fortunate to have that. You have the Bag Factory, then you have Artist Proof, then you have Market Photo, then you also have other fairs like Latitudes that have set up that focus on basically taking presentations of individual artists. So I think for a size of our market, we do have different platforms where people can actually go now, which is really amazing because we're not a very large art market here, but I think it's fantastic that we do, that there are different people who can, who accept, who have different requirements. And I think our sort of redesign as a fair was to really make sure that we ultimately are able to also cater for the young voices that are coming up on the continent, that we're not just so focused on the very big and established players, which there are not so many in South Africa anyway. They just have a bigger stable. So when you look at our galleries that are there, they're not that many. But when you look at the stables they represent, they're quite large, and also like a gallery like SMAC is already traveling to, I think they do over 20 art fairs in the world from South Africa as an example. And I think that's really great for the size of their gallery to be able to take artists to other parts of the world. They're very active in the Italian scene, they're active in the London scene, they're active across the world. So, yeah, I think there are different other ways in which people can engage with, can find opportunities as artists in the city.
Okay. And Attila, going forward, Art Market Budapest, how is it that people can, and do you, maybe we can put the same question to you, do you also take artists that are not represented by galleries? And if so, how? If not, how is it that we can create a space for artists that might now have developed an interest to participate in Art Market Budapest, for them to be represented in that platform.
Although our overall format is the same as the large fairs, the global fairs of the world, we always like to be slightly different, and this is why differently from the classical fairs, we established what we call the art project section at our fair. So it's not only commercial galleries, but also non-profit organizations, foundations, institutions of education who can also bring their artists. And we see these institutions of artistic representation almost as a kind of an incubator for these artists to be, and also a built-up structure for these artists to be able to meet with the galleries who will then take them into their portfolios. What we experience actually at the Art Market Budapest is that a lot of the artists who we bring in the project section, for example, or in the photography section, they end up in the portfolios of galleries that are represented in our commercial gallery section. So yes, there is, and this is why a cooperation with an institution like yourselves is a big help, because we don't have to do the qualitative selection of the artists, but we trust you to do it for us. So if we take our cooperation with the Joburg Art Gallery as a channel or as a tool, we can make sure that the Joburg Art Gallery works as a platform of selection of artists. So I would encourage, I would certainly encourage your artists and to be able to be a part of it, or to want to be a part of it. So short answer is yes. And obviously we have to work it out on an institutional basis, but and I wonder how Mandla copes with this, but the reason why we cannot put individual artists together with with galleries representing artists is because our gallery exhibitors will then say that I've been building up the structure, spending on my artists, and suddenly these individual artists come in as direct competitors of the commercial galleries. So how you solved it, but our trick, maybe you're in better terms with your galleries than I am with ours, so our trick to it is to provide a not-for-profit umbrella as a path for artists to be able to get connected with commercial galleries and the commercial sector.
Sure, if I may come in, Attila, there as well. I think you absolutely spot on. We follow the international model of an art fair, so our positioning is very much aligned. We do create these spaces for different things, and so that we don't clash with the system that is created, so that so we don't clash with the galleries, and nor do we clash with the nonprofit. So we do have all these sections that you just mentioned as well, so that there's a greater collaboration. And obviously, in talking to the galleries, we're able to build this new system which allows for sort of younger voices. But also in Africa, we can wait a lifetime for a gallery to be built. There's absolutely, I think the current model of having to wait for a gallery to be set up for you to be represented is not sustainable for the future. So we recognize that there is that, which is really fantastic, that we know we've inherited a good system, but at the same time, we need to rethink that we shouldn't be creating an expectation that the younger artists need to set themselves in a sort of young future gallery owners need to set themselves up in that way, because the costs that are associated with setting up a gallery, as you know, Vesna will tell you that it's quite expensive. They're all interesting small businesses that have to be sustained the whole year and have programming the whole year, support artists the whole year. So it's not an consistent process. So with Gallery Lab, it allows us to sort of bring in these younger voices who don't necessarily maybe have these big physical spaces, but might really be exciting artists from around the continent. Last year, we had more than 10 of them who were from, well, we had representation of 10 from the continent, right? And quite a lot of them came from Nigeria. Thank you.
And Vesna, in your closing remarks, because now we're already at 3 o'clock, in your closing remarks, if you can just also highlight, is there a need for us to disrupt the system a little bit, or aspects of it, so that it is more responsive, it is more inclusive and more representative, and not, the primary focus should not be on profit maximization, but rather on how the benefits can be spread more evenly to create a more balanced benefit system for everybody across the value chain.
Mr. Mandler has just mentioned some systemic problems in South Africa. Serbia also has a lot of problems. Our museum and gallery infrastructure dates from the 60s of the last century. And so there are 2 contemporary art museums in the country with 7 million inhabitants, but both of them are built 50 years ago. So private contemporary art initiatives are not persistent. In the last 20 years, they have been present for some time, and then they are discouraged because there is not, still in Serbia, similar, there is not a structure and system of art market in the sense it is in the Western civilization. But still, there are extraordinary artists. Some of them are well recognized and present on international market. So we do not have to give up. We all together have to contribute to that, to help that this really comes to another better phase. We don't have to wait. We must do what we think we could do. But regarding this present situation, let us think as a situation bringing up new perspectives and new opportunities for all of us, all players in the art sector. And we just have to take seriously into consideration this present situation and accept it with enthusiasm and with the new creative ideas. That is what remained for us to do.
Attila, thank you, Vesna. Attila, your closing remarks?
I think in summary, we've been talking about global issues, and we've been talking about issues that concern South African art. I think the general conclusion that we can make about the difficulties and the challenges of this year, of the COVID year, is that we shouldn't try to change. We shouldn't try to waste efforts in things that we cannot change, but we should rather focus on how we can make the most of a given situation, no matter how difficult that one is. This one is referring back to online presence, offline presence. So I think that's the overall conclusion, without getting into details, with regard to the global global situation. In terms of the in terms of art in South Africa, my message to you guys that that there's an amazing quality of art in your country. I had the pleasure and the possibility and the opportunity to know slightly more about this than a lot of other people in the world. You know, I've had the pleasure to present artists in cooperation with the Joburg Art Gallery and other exhibitors, artists like Justin Dingwall, Graham Williams, an amazing lineup. So you should build your self-trust on the fact that the quality you have is up on global standards. Take advantage of the infrastructure that you already have. The Joburg Art Gallery, the fair, and other opportunities, and make sure that you're present. You go to places because you have to be present first, then to be able to explain who you are later. And we're here to be a part of that effort because we know what we're talking about, and we're happy to be a tool in your hands.
Sure. Thank you. Pramanta, your closing remarks?
Oh, there we are. Thanks. Yeah, I do think that, COVID does present a lot of opportunities to really go back to looking at things that have worked. I think the things that have worked, we shouldn't try too hard to change. I agree with the colleagues. But also, I think it does open up opportunities for greater collaboration. I think that the global art ecosystem is, for me, in my view, has been quite divided and not open enough to collaboration. So I do think that the opportunity that now exists is that we can seek partnerships that will really enhance each other's experience. I think the collector base or the people who are interested in art or in this part of the world are also interested in knowing what other practices are taking place around the world. So we're very excited to always be able to bring that into here. But also, Joburg people are also very excited to discover the rest of the continent. A few years ago, we did a very big East Africa focus, and a couple of years ago, we did one on Nigeria. So I do think that, it does present an opportunity for us to sort of find ways in which we can really collaborate more around the world. We tend to do pop-ups around the world in the different cities to promote what we're doing here. And a big part of it will really be assisted through tourism as well. I think the image of Johannesburg needs to change because it has an impact in terms of the kind of people we want to attract coming to the city, kind of fear coming here, and that's really the truth. Which makes our work very hard. I mean, it makes our efforts quite hard to convince people to come to Johannesburg and see it for itself. But once they're here, they realize that none of these things that were said about Johannesburg are actually true. And I look forward to a collaboration. I think the doors are open for us to work more closely. We very fortunate to have some really strong artists who do live in Johannesburg and who continue. In fact, there's more artists. A couple of artists have actually moved from other cities to Johannesburg because they find that Johannesburg is much cheaper to live in. And yeah, so I think we have an exciting art ecosystem. It's a question of how can we collaborate more and really make sure that locally we're strong, and at the same time we have a presence around the world, given the resources that we have and the attention that everybody, when you're in a global stage, you're competing with so many voices. And yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. And we also would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the excellent insights that you have shared with our audiences in Johannesburg, but also our audiences that are joining us across the world. And this is the first of a webinar series that we are launching as a City of Johannesburg as part of the Arts Alive program. We are going to have another one on the 22nd of September. It's going to focus on the meaning and the direction of the arts in the post-COVID-19 era. And that will slightly be focused on the performing arts because we've got a strong lineup of speakers, all of them domestically and recognized practitioners in their own right. We're going to have Ntate Monageng Motsabi, Vuyani Gregory Makoma, Aus Napo Mashiane, Ntate Mphomo Lepo. I'm forgetting somebody. I think those are going to be our speakers, in this discussion. So please tune in on the 22nd of September. We will be going live with that. And would like to thank you, Vesna, for joining us. And I know you have to run, but I'm glad that you could stay 10 minutes longer than was necessary. And also to thank you, Attila, joining us from Budapest, a beautiful city with a river running right across it. And I hope to come to Serbia next time I am in that part of the world. And I promise, Attila, I'm going to bring Bramandla with me this time, and we'll see if we can also bring Ugogo Esther Mahlangu, because I know we had planned that this year perhaps we must explore the idea of her coming through for a South Africa focus. But let's see how the collaborations go for next year, and see how we can take a strong cohort of South African artists and present them to that part of the market. Thanks, Bramandla. You always available to support us. You are one of the greatest supporters of the city, a great ambassador for the city of Johannesburg. Everywhere you go in the world, you talk about Johannesburg and its value and changing perceptions, as you said, So we would really appreciate you for that. I would like to really thank the city of Johannesburg for presenting this under the leadership of the executive mayor, Jeffrey Makubo, and the MMC for Community Development, who's the custodian of the Arts Alive program, Councillor Margaret Arnold. And it is through the leadership of such people that we're able to present these kinds of programs for the artistic community. So thank you all for your participation. We've come to the end of this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Gentlemen. See you in the region or in the South Africa.
Thank you.
Yes.
1998 in Novi Sad, Serbia. We have been engaged in organizing exhibitions, presenting and marketing artworks, offering a wide range of professional services, art consultancy and publishing. We exhibit selected modern and contemporary artists together with emerging ones. Special attention has been paid to the international cooperation and presentation of Serbian artists abroad. Therefore, we cooperate with a number of galleries internationally. In 2013, we established Danube Dialogues Contemporary Festival, which has become our major regional developing project.